Hello, Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life, and welcome to another episode or roundtable of Build an MMO. Today's stuff is focused on crafting, and so let me bring on the guys from here in Google Hangout. Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
Hello, Marcus.
Uh-oh, I just lost all my audio feeds on you guys. Damn it. Okay, I can hear you okay. I think.
You have video. Oh my god.
Yeah, I have video. I don't know what's going on. Oh, lovely. All of these issues. You know, I've only made this 10 times more complex by live streaming to Twitch at the same time going to YouTube. So, as long as we can keep hearing you, I'm good. So.
All right.
Okay. One thing I wanted to mention is that with the one of the things that we wanted to involve the community with, but couldn't do on the same scale as everything else, is naming the game. And so we do have a name for the game. It is not available yet out to the public. It will be released sometime soon. We did actually have a couple of the viewers with us. We had Brian and we had Evil Overlord,
Yep.
and so them along with Jacques, which it might be the first video that you guys actually get to meet Jacques in. Jacques Rousseau, who's the CEO of NeoJack. And anyway, so we did come up with a name and working on getting that implemented now. Once that's all ready to go, it'll be announced. So, and we did record that. We recorded our whole brainstorming session, and it was really a lot of fun. So I was glad you guys could join in. Okay, so... Today's subject is crafting, and I know that this subject is huge, or as one of my youngest kids have been saying lately, he's been saying gihugic, or ginormous. And so, anyway...
Make that boy president.
Make that boy president, yeah. Make up a new language while we go. So...
Hey, there's already precedent.
This subject is so big that I know that it's going to span over multiple roundtables. And so I want to kind of break it down into a couple of parts. And those parts being really, let's just start with crafting in general. And then we'll get into some more specific stuff as we go, you know, whether we're talking like crafting of weapons, crafting of armor, furniture, houses, or whatever. So just try and keep it general to start. I know it's going to get really detailed, but we need to break it up into multiple parts. So you guys who are here you're joining us here in the Google Hangout, give me your opinion. What is it about crafting that you like? Let's start there.
Depth, but simplicity.
So like easy to navigate, but you can make complex things?
Yes.
Okay.
Customizability.
Okay. So like you're able to make a chair, but maybe different types of chairs and different colors, maybe stuff like that.
The ability to make unique things that are just unique to what you do, always a good thing in crafting, and that's always compelling about it.
Unique to what you do, and what do you mean by that? Like you're able to forge a very unique item, or
just if it was small things like if you craft something that looks some kind of color that is hard to get, for example, for a chair, let's say, like a certain wood the chair is made of that is really hard to find, for example, you can make that, and it's unique to something that very few people can actually have access to, and yeah.
That actually sounds pretty interesting. I'm interested in that.
It's always good to have only a few people in the game that can actually craft certain items. So very rare recipes or formula or whatever to be able to craft those. So the people that have spent the time to get these recipes or to create these items actually may get a benefit rather than everything being so universal that anyone can build very quickly and very easily.
Depth, like, you should be rewarded for the amount of time and effort you've put into your crafting skills.
Damn Skippy.
Yes.
Damn Skippy, yeah. I know. Hey, if I got to make 5,000 chairs so that I can get up my chair skill up,
I'd go for it.
And I'll make the most awesome chairs.
Yeah, but there's another side to this as well that I think that is very important. At least I know that it is for me. That usually I'm lacking in many games is that we should try and avoid somehow. And correct me if I'm totally in the wrong path, but we should try and avoid that. You could make a bunch of stuff on a very low level, so to say, or in the beginning of the game, that after a certain point, all of a sudden become totally worthless to everybody who is past this point.
Oh, right. Like, everybody has to go through the chair making stage in order to get to the higher stuff, and so the world is full of chairs.
But not only that, it's just that after you surpass a certain gaining in levels or how far you have proceeded, this stuff simply becomes worthless because you can't do anything with it anymore because you advance in a certain level that was coming along with the crafting system that simply makes it overabundant or total trash. Which happens in many games. Like, for example, what's a good example? Probably in World of Warcraft, you can make a ton of certain materials to get through a certain stage to grow up up to a certain point. But once you've passed a certain point, then you can make more of them to still grow up. But you will never get rid of it. The only thing you can do is literally trash it because there's simply no demand for it on the market. So I would say, like, build maybe subparts that will always be used for everybody somewhere else in the game.
Or use a system like in Star Wars Galaxies, a practice system that you can switch to a practice mode, your skills, but you don't get an item out. You get a bit more XP in this case, or something like that, more skill points. Maybe instead of 1 you get 2.
Or perhaps there can be a system where that wooden chair that you made that's really crappy and nobody wants can be broken up and put in the wood burner to heat your house.
Oh,
for example,
so it can be recycled.
Yeah, recycling. Yes, exactly.
Recycle it.
Yeah, okay, so that's in EVE Online. I know they have that. There's reclamation of resources.
Yeah.
So we can be environmentally conscious about the pixels we're using.
No.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily then have to mean that recycling the chair would actually gain you more experience in a certain skill or whatsoever, but it just regains you the materials. You don't have to go out for another X hours to get those, but you can use the same materials to build it into something more advanced.
Or you get a recycling skill where the more times you do it, the higher percentage you get back of materials you've used already.
Yeah, that as well. That could also just be implemented in a skill. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that to where there's only one or, that it might not be one of the skills that you want to have, but you may work in tandem with somebody else who's an expert in reclamation or of resource management or something like that, and, would have the skills to take all of that stuff that you made and do something with it. In fact, maybe they'll buy them cheap because they know that they can make money off of their recycling or reclamation skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could also be fun then, that, for example, if you compare that later into a PvP action in the game, and I know this is a bit of a sidetrack, but you could, for example, find an abandoned home or someone who hasn't logged into the game for a long time, and you bash in his door and find all this nice furniture, and you go like, well, this is not exactly what I have in mind for my house, so you recycle the whole thing, take away all the stuff, and turn it into something you want in your house. Somewhere along those lines, but at least to have something like a continuum in the making and recreating of things. But But you can do that not just with furniture, houses, or chairs, but you can do that in the whole crafting system.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. And, you know, a lot of these things, if we just mimic real life, we're going to go a long way in making great stuff. And so I can totally see doing some sort of resource reclamation system. And, of course, it wouldn't give you 100% back, but you could get higher and higher. We just have to, if we're going to implement something like that, you have to make sure that it doesn't, that nobody can get high enough so that it can be abused. So that somebody says, okay, well, I've got this, you know, I've got 10,000 wooden planks, and I'm going to make all of these chairs or whatnot, and then I'm going to log into my other character, and I'm going to take all the chairs back apart, and I'm going to get, you know, 900 planks out of it, and then you go back and forth. I mean, maybe that's good, but it reduces the value of the raw wood.
You have to be able to burn the materials, or over inflation. You'll end up with inflation if you can reuse them.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about. Okay, so one of the things that's talked about in many MMOs is gold sinks or money sinks, and really, it's the destruction of currency or of resources. And to keep us from getting too much. Trees, of course, are going to be renewable, but like metals, you know, we talked about metals not being so renewable, and that, you know, they were going to be harder and harder to get, you know, the more the resources were depleted. And so recycling would become very important with metal, whereas I can grow more trees. Maybe it's just an economy of how easily the items are acquired in the first place.
Well, I think that's also a matter of where you're going to use all those materials in what sense. For example, if you want to build a house that is made out of, say, brick and marble and wood, and you start by having a wooden fence around it, which gives it a certain defense property in the PvP area. I'm just saying something out loud here. And then all of a sudden you decided you want something heavier protection. You replace that wooden fence by a metal fence, which of course takes, I don't know, it would take you about 1,000 recycled swords to make a tiny little fence around your house, which actually is pretty close to a real life situation as well. So you need a lot of metal. So that would kind of like get rid of your problem. As soon as you start making big stuff out of potential small stuff that you could recycle, you already sink that stuff of abundance.
Maybe we should bring in a issue of quality of the materials. For instance, if you take apart 100 chairs and recycle the wood, you're not going to get big, large planks of wood. You're going to get small pieces
Small
of
chunks
wood.
of wood, right.
So the quality level would go down. Now, on the flip side, if you're taking 1,000 basic swords and recycling them and
you can
turning them into
down.
something, you can remelt them down. Now, if the quality of the metal or the quality of the weapon is really low, you're going to get low-quality materials back. If the quality of the weapon is really high, you may get exotic materials back. For instance, if you have a masterwork weapon and they had very pure, iron ore from the start, and they added in a few things to make it even stronger, maybe you'll get like high-quality iron and some high-quality materials back on the side. Something separate. You get into things that are truly unique items or heavily magicked items. Maybe they can't be recycled because of their nature.
Yeah.
So this suddenly becomes a matter of what is the item you're recycling. I mean, if you're talking about recycling, that's one of the things I don't like about EVE. There's no way to identify the quality of the build, but in EVE it's a default material, because then you're with the technologies involved, you're adding a level of complexity that they just really could not come up with a clear mechanic for. But in this case, there is a clear distinction between the quality of the maker, the materials, the skill level. So you could implement that as part of it.
This could also be a feature of uniqueness that was wanted. and that that in order for I'm not sure what a good example is, but in order for this really rare type of metal, maybe it's out of swords that were forged with certain items that when they're melted back down again and one other ingredient is added, you have a new very rare metal or something like that.
An alloy.
Yeah, something that that through the destruction of something else actually increases the value of it. And then we're talking about the high-end craftsmen that really want to make the really rare items. Maybe that's part of how it's gotten. And to make those really rare things, that the amount of resources that you go through is exponentially larger than a regular sword or whatever. That you may end up using about 10 times the amount or something like that.
Yeah, that whole system's actually in Worm Online, where you need a lot more. Basically, the quality of the stuff depends on the guy's skill level. And the higher skill level, the higher chance you have to get the higher quality items.
Yeah.
So, and then with that higher quality metal that you smelted, the weaponsmith can then make the higher quality swords. It works well with wood, with stone. I'm not sure with stone, but metals and things like that, to making all the weapons and armor. So that's a system that they've got completely in that game, which certainly is a good.
And they have as well, if I remember correctly, they also have a system that when you start, you actually waste a lot of material because your skills are simply not high enough to actually create something that is worth. So you have a log and you use a saw on that to try and turn it into a plank. And the first 50 times it simply fails because you're lacking the skills. So that material just disappears into the void.
Yeah,
it burns up.
It just simply disappears. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you fail to make a plank of wood is but I think basic thing, and then the further up the skills you get, the less chance you do to fail on making an item.
Less failure and higher quality.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that sounds very reasonable and very logical.
Yeah.
So, simplest answer for the win.
It also comes again pretty close to reality, I think. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say that we have to stick to getting real close to reality, but I always enjoy it when there's at least a little bit reference to real things going on, so that you can associate a bit more with it and enjoy it a little bit more. And it also makes more sense. Like if you have iron bars and you say it takes 1 iron bar to make a sword and then 2 iron bars to make an armor, that simply doesn't add up. If you would compare it in the physical world.
Yeah. The mechanics have to make sense.
Yeah, like if you take a sword that just an ordinary sword that you would smelt down and like recycle, then that would not even allow you to make half a gauntlet. So you'd need a bit more than that. And if you want to make a full plate armor, you'd need at least 100 swords to do that, because you still have some waste material.
If there's enough waste, you're gonna have to make sure that the end product is better than any drop, than anything else you can get. Like you can't go to the auction house and get anything better than what was handcrafted. It's gonna, if there's a big challenge to crafting something, there's gonna be a big benefit to having it end up right.
Yep.
No matter what level, along all the levels. The handcrafted stuff has got to be better. If it's got that much cost to it, it's got to have that much yield.
So I guess maybe that brings us to another subject within this, and that is that should how much stuff do we have right off the bat? Do we have NPC vendors that are selling things already, or do we try and make everything 100% player created?
100% player created, definitely.
Player created.
I agree with Richard.
That's a good question.
I would go for the worm approach, where you start with absolutely nothing.
I like that idea.
Things seem to be real interesting. Sorry. Go ahead.
On the forums, I had put up actually a reference to this. I think there should be some NPC sellers. However, I think that it should be low quality items or very minor magic items. And as players take over the economy and start building stuff of higher quality, putting those NPCs out of business and basically making them change professions or move.
Yeah,
Just have it as
either that or have them only sell something that would be beneficial to you, like in the first week of play, and after that totally makes no sense because you've moved on and you can make better stuff. And make them solely as NPCs that would buy stuff off of you, because if you start off with a server or a sharded server, non-sharded, whatever type of server, with some new players, there is no currency in the game, and the only way you can create that is by selling something to someone that already has a currency. Now, if you don't have a system implemented yet, there is nothing to gain because nobody has currency. So you need, and I posted this in the forum as well, you need like an NPC that will buy any type of random crap that you find or yield or gather in the game for a very low price, but just to generate the initial amount of money, currency, whatever it is that you're talking about in the game. And from there on, then the player base will decide how much things are worth, and they will create their own economy that will stabilize itself, provided that the resource amounts are put in by the devs in the right way.
Well, it could be the fact that the items that you sell to the NCPs are half the price that the market sells them for.
No, the market should be definitely decided by players only, because that's the only way you can really keep an
Yeah, the way you do that is raise the price of the NPC item, right? So you've got a gold sink for the people who aren't interacting with other people to get a good price.
Well, NCPs can buy stuff for next to nothing, and if people want to get rid of it to them, they can, just to sort of get a little bit of cash. But
right.
I think, beginner stuff only for NCPs. But I'm also thinking, I know Marky likes to have a shop and such, but you should be able to sell to NCPs who then can sell on as a shop, as it were, if the markets or auction houses aren't as close as need be.
This is interesting because we haven't, I don't think we've talked yet about what the currency would be in the game or how it would be in the game, or, whether or not gosh, I just don't know. Because, are we going to have to where you can buy currency, direct from the game publisher? Like in Guild Wars 2, where you can buy diamonds and there's dual currencies, or
no dual currencies.
No, please, no.
Whatever currency they do, make it one currency for the entire game.
You'll end up with pay to win.
Yeah,
and that's a dead game. That game would die if it was pay to win. You don't want that.
I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, but I do know that a lot of people believe that same thing. And so that it is something that needs to be very well researched. A lot of the games go with, you can buy stuff like clothing enhancements, or you can make yourself look better, all visual stuff and not gameplay stuff. But at the same time, there are a lot of successful games out there where you can buy the high penetration ammo, or you can buy magazine clips for your guns where you can hold 100 bullets instead of 30, and stuff like that, which do give an advantage, but don't blow everybody else out of the water.
They're not a game breaker,
right? And so I really like this idea of taking and having no currency right in the beginning, and that that there's just some NPCs around that will buy some lower end stuff from you, and that kind of is where the currency starts to come into the markets. What that I think though, I'm worried a little bit about the inflation rate on that, because as we get more currency in, the prices will continue to rise, which maybe isn't a bad thing. But it might encourage farming too. And that's a subject that we'll have for another show, is how to keep from having, farming and botting going on, and such. And so,
I know my feelings on that.
well, you guys might be surprised on my feelings on that.
You've
but,
got a player base that likes to farm,
Well, we do, but we don't want to. We don't want to have people that are being paid 10 cents an hour to come in and farm the game, so that they can, turn around and generate $1 an hour in real-world cash, which is what happens from a lot of third-world countries that have internet access. And then there's the automated versions of that. We got to be really careful about that stuff, and because it can destroy the game, and in fact, I should see if I can get my friend Joffrey Zatkins on the show for it. He's one of the original EverQuest developers, and he sat down with me at a conference one time and explained to me how it's detrimental. The botting and farming is detrimental to the game economy, and how it costs players more to play because that's going on. And that's when I found religion that this is not the way to go, and I think you would have a really good insight into that. I'll make a note. I'll make a note on that. So the crafting. I'm hearing several things here. One is we want it to be in depth. Two, we don't want it to be so hard that we can't figure it out, but it needs to have complexity that eases with higher skill. And the higher skill level you get, then the higher quality items can be made. Am I missing anything with that statement?
No, not exactly. I'm just referring back to something we discussed yesterday, and I'm not sure whether it was on the live show, whether you were still here, Marcus, or if it was in the half an hour we spent together afterwards, but I think it was Evil that came up with the idea, or maybe we got up with the idea together, that everybody could theoretically wield a certain weapon that was created, except because of its specific needs and skills, if you want to use it in its full potential, you'd have to wait and train up further in that skill level. So you could wield a certain weapon that potentially could be extremely dangerous, but you simply haven't understood as a player yet how to handle it. And therefore, for you, it just becomes an ordinary sword. So that you don't have okay, in the first month, I can only use so-and-so sword, and then there's another sword that is available. I can maybe make it, or maybe a guild guy can make it for me, but I have to wait for another year and a half before I can actually pick it up and do something with it.
Or at least do something with it to the full potential of that weapon.
That leads to another idea, which is you might have the same sword from level 1 to level 60 or 80 or whatever.
Well, there's no levels in this game. That's all.
Okay.
There's no levels, but there are skills.
Yes, but the point
over time, development over time.
But the point of the point of being able to pick up your average sword that's actually a magic plus 10 Vorpal weapon is that when you're dealing with levels, there's no context to your learning whatsoever. Okay, and that's something that always irked the crap out of me about leveling games, where, yes, I suddenly became a 10th level paladin and I can now use this sword, and I can see that it's only at 10th level that I acquire the use of this sword, but it makes no sense that I can't just use it as a sword. I might not even know what special abilities that sword has, which is a whole different level of
then
things.
That's a whole item identification skill.
Yeah.
Right.
So I find a sword sticking out of some orc's carcass, and I don't know what it is other than it's a really well-made, well-balanced sword, and I may get a bonus to my attack or something like that, but I have no clue that this sword will glow blue and eviscerate orcs whenever I'm around. You know,
Until you get near an orc and you go, damn, my pocket is getting hot as it's glowing.
really. But, you know, because it makes sense that if you know how to use a sword, that you can, you know, and there isn't a lot of variance in swords. I mean, there are some specialties with swords, like using a broadsword or a claymore from the English style of sword fighting to using a katana from Japanese style. I mean, one is bash and other is slice. So you're going to have some style differences. I could see where there would be a difference in how well you use the weapon there. But
because if you only know how to bash and you don't know how to slice and you use the wrong weapon in real life, you also have no idea what it does because you'll simply break it.
Yes, but in the same token, you get into the magical aspects of things.
Right.
You know, you have magic swords. Well, one of the things I brought up is the possibility of acquiring a cursed weapon. You don't know it's cursed unless somebody can tell you it's cursed. Yeah. So you could just be using a weapon and then, you know, accidentally decapitate a friend, you know?
Yeah.
That is an awesome idea.
That is funny. That is funny.
Yeah, real strong weapon.
The one thing I do specifically want to make sure of is that if you're a big crafting guy and you're intentionally adding a curse onto a weapon to gain more power on the weapon, because I think there should be a balance of it, I think that you should not be able to cherry pick the curse.
Right.
That's a random thing. I think it should be a relatively random thing unless you have a specific skill in cursing items.
It would be very unique.
You have a really high skill level in cursing items, so you could get a reasonable facsimile of what you want. But I don't think...
Like, for example, 5% chance that you'll cut your hand off.
There are two things brand new right here. Yeah, cursed weapons, intentionally cursed weapons that are insidiously so, or
man, buyer
not
beware.
so obvious. Yeah,
Right.
If you can craft stuff, you can craft it cursed, and nobody knows. They just have these ill effects.
That's really interesting, but that might need to think about the marketplace on that as well. We have to have trust in what we're buying.
No, the good idea with that.
Normal place.
The idea with cursed weapons, for example, if you have a cursed weapon that is the same stats basically as another weapon on the market, and the other weapon isn't cursed, you can sell it as the same weapon, so someone who buys it from you can't see it's cursed, so they can actually buy a cursed weapon thinking it's not cursed. Because it has the same stats, exactly the same weapon.
I don't want to have some authority that says this weapon is verified good, or is bad or whatnot.
Yeah, how much time do you want to spend buying rations and drink at the bar, filling your water skins, and buying your horses and stuff? How much detail do you want?
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the idea that with greater power comes greater risk, and so while it may not be a curse, it may be something that is just a side effect of not being a grandmaster at whatever the specific skill is that's required, for its
powers.
Its powers. I've seen people use these swords before in martial arts that when wielded properly, the blades stay straight, but when they're not wielded well, the blades wobble.
Yep.
And so I just think of something like that it's a skill thing, it's a type of item and everything, and that it really could cause some unexpected results, but be very effective when you're high skill. And that could be similar as a curse, or similar as something funny. You could accidentally, clip yourself in the leg or something because you got too big of a wobble.
Yeah, you could inflict yourself a certain percentage of damage every time you wield it, and then you go like, okay, so this is not a standard sword. Maybe I should keep it or sell it to someone, say that it has something extra on it, so therefore it will make it more valuable, which is also a matter of trust within the game between the person
Well,
who's selling it
if
and
things
one
are
who buys it.
special and they're just listed as special, but it takes somebody else to identify them, then maybe
Yeah.
we've got a whole thing here where someone has the identification skill. You know, somebody makes the item, it has some special property, it's just listed as special or unknown, and then somebody else identifies it, and then that person, then after it's
Estimates the
identified,
value.
then they sell it.
Right.
And when they're selling it that way, then it is listed as having a particular property because it's been identified.
Right.
It's like diamonds. Like when you go out and buy a diamond, they're
Right.
graded.
With someone else identifying it, though, we can go into the same thing as yesterday with the books, where you can choose not to tell them exactly what properties it has in case you want to, like, sucker them for the sword or something along those lines.
That
that's
could be
where-
leads to what I would be trying to suggest is maybe you have a player character that's a sage that seeks out knowledge about these weapons and armor and shields. That,
Well, depending on how
player
this,
character.
depending
that
on
can
how
read
this,
something. Sorry.
depending on how the skill system breaks down, anybody could get the acquire the knowledge, the skill in identifying things.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it goes back to, well, what are you specialized in?
Right.
For instance, a blacksmith will know he's crafting a high-end masterwork. If he's a master blacksmith, he's going to know he's crafting a masterwork weapon. And if he goes to a mage and says, "Hey, I want to have you put this special power on it," and the mage does it, he can sell that weapon knowing exactly what it is without identifying it because he created it.
Yeah.
Now, this goes back to how much do you trust the people making your weapons? If you're going to be finding weapons in dungeons or whatever, then it's buyer beware or finder beware. You don't know. I mean, it could just be an orc that had a weapon that he stole off some guy, and it has no magical properties, or it has one magical property, but you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That leads into, well, does your magician know how to identify specific types of magic? Does he know? I mean, this is a whole different set of skills for, like, the magic users.
Right.
Or maybe
You're going to take the stuff back home to be identified.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what this does is it makes an interdependent community as well.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it
because-
allows us, or we all have 10 different characters with different skills.
Well, that's up to you.
Possibly.
If you want to start a secondary character with a boost in another direction of skills separately of your first
Yeah.
one, that's totally okay. But I still think we should stick to the idea that you can theoretically have a sandbox character that can be whatever he wants to be, as long as you stick around long enough. Eventually, you will get close to being everything in a very fairly high level. I really enjoy that in the games that I've played so far.
That's not only are we talking about crafting your items, that's crafting a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
still crafting.
It
I mean,
is, it is.
we were not saying that it was going to be about crafting items. We said it was about
No,
crafting,
I just
and
said
it was going to be a long topic.
So,
Yes.
yeah, that is an interesting idea. And what if you could apply one other factor to that, which is time? And so, if the character is a day old, they have a maximum cap of such and such, or a year old, let's say they have a maximum cap of so and such and such skills. But when they're, a year old, that they're actually able to learn, have a total cap of 50% more, or something like that, so that the older characters are wiser.
I don't think there should be a actual, like, hard
Cap.
limit cap.
No.
I think that's something that should be self-limiting as a game mechanic. For instance, my big idea with the skills was the way you learn skills is by going and reading or training with somebody who is more knowledgeable than you, whether it be an NPC or a PC. So I have a library at my castle. It has fairly high quality books. Each book has a certain amount of information, and that represents points in your skill points. And you go and you say, well, I'm going to queue up. I'm going to look for a book on this first, of the highest quality. Then the next subject, I'm going to look for a book of the highest quality, and you'll work your way down. And when you're logged off, if you log off in that library, you're studying.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, of
Interesting.
course, the 8-hour break for sleeping, and then you go back to studying. That way, people are, every time they log in, they will have something new that they know about the universe.
That's a very interesting idea. Setting
then
a character
if
up
you
to
find
learn
something-
while you're gone.
Yeah, and
have a real-time factor included, is what you're saying.
well,
right?
yeah,
Pretty
but
much.
you know, something that makes sense. If you're if you're just a normal human being, you have to take time out to sleep. So if you're logged in playing and going adventuring, and you come home and you settle down in your castle library and you're reading, well, eventually you're going to go take a nap or fall asleep, and you know, so that's factored in as a mechanic in the game. A lot of the stuff I'm focusing on is the mechanics of how this works, not specifics. You know, I want to craft a weapon like this.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's
know,
how we do it and what it involves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but once you've
because-
learned it or read it, then you need to actually put it into practice. So you need to make a certain amount before you actually get credited with
That's
that.
that's also
skill.
interesting.
Of course, and those two are in direct alignment with each other, but you
Yeah.
can't do one without the other.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You can't just start. You probably have to put in some study time before you just start trying to make. Otherwise, you waste all your resources, like you were talking about.
Right. Not only that,
No.
but you automatically implement a semi-butters protection method as well, because
Oh,
you can exclude those things because there is actually a real-time time factor involved where there's no game mechanics involved where you can create a bot that does something for you to
I
quickly
like that.
advance you.
I like that. So you're not.
Yeah.
So the brand new character is not crafting high level items, even if they work on it really hard right off the bat. They
Yep.
there's
If
there's
you want to
time.
study like the most highly advanced book as Evil is described and you want to study it, theoretically that will be possible, although it would still take you 60 days to learn it. So you can get the book given to you by someone, and then you log off, and then you have to wait for 60 days before you actually, as a character, understand what was in the book, because it's too high level for you.
That's
Another
awesome.
aspect of what I'm going to be posting on the forum is there's different levels of skills that is available to you. For instance, you have a basic skill, you have an uncommon skill, an advanced skill, and then you get into things that are rare levels, and then you get into exotic items, and then you get into godly skill levels. Okay, if you don't have basic skills in a subject, you can't learn the advanced ones until you've learned the uncommon ones. So if you get, like, say, half the points available in a basic skill, you can now start earning points in the uncommon. You get half the uncommon level, you can start earning points in advanced. This way, there's a mechanic that limits how fast you can advance. And it's
So
completely
basically,
invisible.
are you saying you cannot learn the number 1, then learn the number 10 in the same breath?
Correct. Because you have no context to the skill. Somebody who has the most advanced knowledge in, say, computers. Okay, I know nothing about computers. I go and I learn C. I might have an idea of how to do advanced programming, but I have no idea how to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
But
have-
did you ever start off at number 1?
Well, if you do, then you work your way up. It's just like
exactly.
going through the grades in school and everything.
Do you still have time for people who learn at number 1 as opposed to learn at number 10?
Well, that's dependent on if what you're asking about the mechanic is somebody with a higher level of skill should be able to teach the lower levels.
Or create books on the lower
Or
levels
create
that they
books on the
can.
lower level.
That they can learn from.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Yeah.
the latter one will be better even.
Yeah, they say the best teacher is a student that's at a equal level of competence.
Yeah. Now,
But
just a
I've
quick-
always found with teachers that they will learn number 1, then they will go up to number 5, then teach you what number 1 is after they have learned what number 1, 2, 3, and 4 is.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So you get
You can't do it. You
familiarized
can't
with
do it
higher
out of order.
levels.
It's getting a calculus book when you haven't learned multiplication.
Yeah.
You look at it, you know that it's numbers, you know that there's math involved, but you don't have an understanding enough to really get very far in it.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
much
can
what we
I
discussed
ask
yesterday with
you?
the language.
Can I ask you in that same breath, when you learn number 1, can you not share number 1 with the people that you don't think can understand it, because many of them can?
Well, number 1 is like most basic, and so
Well, I think that basic knowledge should be, you should be able to teach on your own level and levels below you. I mean, none of this is set in stone at this juncture. It's just I'm throwing out the idea. I've gotten a very complex idea as far as skills go, so I'm still flushing it out. But the throwing this out here for the populace, basically, if we're looking at a situation where you want to self-limit the players and by default self-limit bots.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a straight line where you, like in Eve, I can set up a skill queue and walk away for 9 days.
So can I
come
ask
back.
you, evil overlord, on Eve, would you actually like to have one-upmanship on a newbie player into Eve, or not?
Well, Eve's a little bit more complex than that, but
Well, but then
yeah.
again, when you first started playing Eve, my friend, surely somebody had to tell you how to go on with Eve, yeah?
Yeah.
yes,
Um,
I needed
yeah.
help.
You
Yeah.
kind of do have that dynamic in place already in Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea is, people, skills should be your interaction with the items in the game, in my opinion.
I'm just wondering why anyone would want to hold back any free sharing information
It's
on
not
the
about
computer.
holding back. It's about having to do things in a logical order because there's prerequisites to learning other things.
Yeah. That's what this is.
But can you imagine if me and you, my friend, were walking across the street and the bus was coming along, and I seen the bus, would you rather tell me that the bus was going to knock us over, or leave it for 5 years until the bus had knocked you over?
Well, that's depending on how evil I'm feeling, and whether or not I can step out of the way.
I'll drive the bus.
We're getting into we're getting
I'll
into
be the cameraman.
We're getting into
I'll be
a
the
question.
cameraman.
Yeah. I think
We're
I
getting
think-
into a question of ethics at this point. But
and we're getting a little too deep on this one area at
Subject,
the moment.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
we should
Yeah,
go
well,
back to
we-
the
we only
crafting
have-
Trying to
part.
stick to
we
crafting.
only have a little bit of time left in this episode. So what I'd like to throw out there is what kinds of crafting shall we have in the game? We'll have like weapons, I imagine, armor,
Weapons, armor, jewelry, clothing,
Jewelry.
Magic.
cloth, cloaks.
Pretty much everything. You
did
can put
somebody
on
say
yourself
magic?
right now.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Has anybody taken into account Google Glass for this new Eve? Or not?
Mhm.
None of us can afford Google Glass at the moment, but
Oh,
when it becomes
come
more
on.
affordable,
You've got
it's
your
only about
computer in
$1,500
front
bucks.
of you. Your computer is just a glorified Google Glass.
Yeah, okay. So
I'm sorry. If I wore a Google Glass, I'd have to shoot myself.
I wouldn't want to be collecting, 15 of this, 10 of that, 5 of that, 2 of these high-end items. I wouldn't want to be having to be like a woman collecting groceries. I don't like that. That turns me off.
okay.
Like World of
for other-
Warcraft
Good
with
point.
Okay,
like
let
even
me
though
let me bring this back to what we're on right now, which is I've got some subjects here. What I'm looking for is additional subjects that we're going to tackle with crafting, and so I've got weapons, armor, furniture, housing, tinker, jewelry, and magic.
Architecture,
Consumables.
carpentry,
Architecture. Okay.
mining, smelting.
Marcus,
Mining
don't
and
forget
smelting.
consumables.
Something like
Polishes.
engineering,
Consumables.
maybe.
Potions
Are we
and
having one type
food
of armor or leather
Wow.
working
armor.
cloth?
You know,
Armor.
I wonder, should we look at the Eve list of skills?
Yeah.
No.
Let's have a look.
No.
Terms
It's
and
huge.
conditions. Terms and conditions. Okay. T's and C's.
No, I would rather see that we divide up anything that we could possibly come up with that we could create in the game, and then divide that up into subgroups and go from there. So work vice versa, so to say.
Oh, so work backwards.
Yes, exactly.
So I want a
think
house.
that-
What does it take to create that?
Yeah, well, so you go, okay, so we started with the house as the first idea to do in the game. And from the house, you can say, okay, what comes along with the house, either in it, at it, how do you get to the house, what materials do you need for the house, what tools do you need to get the materials to build the house. So you start in a centralized idea, which was the first idea that we originated. This is also the way we already started thinking for 4 episodes, so that will make more sense to come up with what we need, what will be created in the game, and therefore you can very easily lay out a path that tells you, like, okay, so then we have these subcategories that involves all of the stuff that we can create in the game.
And
How
then
does that sound to
we
you?
end up starting to fill out the
Exactly.
skill trees.
So maybe in the remaining time we have now, if everybody agrees with this approach, at least we can come up with whatever it is that we can create, and then maybe in the next episode we can come up with, okay, so how can we cycle this down and fill in how we divide it up, and then go from there. Is that something that everybody can work with?
So is that your main problems with Eve then, Oaf?
We don't have
No,
any problem with
we
Eve. We're
don't
not
have any
actually talking
problems.
about Eve.
Mark it is, right?
Marcus.
We
Or Mark.
Mark. I think this is Mark. That was Mark
Yeah,
Wilson.
Mark Wilson,
We've been going through all kinds of information already. I've only joined in the meetings yesterday, but what we've discussed so far, also what I've read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're trying to develop something new. At least in the base that we're trying to create something from a community base, but we don't necessarily have to create a completely new game. A good stolen idea is better than a very bad thought of idea, in my opinion. So let's just try and get all the best ideas of what we can from existing
So
games.
can
and put
I
those
ask
together.
you then, my friend, in the same breath, do we have the programmer or coder in the room that we can actually talk to, who this
No.
makes...
No,
No.
we're
No.
quite
They
intentional.
are
leaving that out.
intentionally not invited, and the reason is because we don't want to taint our brainstorming, our suggestions with limitations of what they think can be programmed or not. And so we just want to present to them what we want to do, and then let them figure out how to make it happen. I don't want to hear any objections right off the bat that, oh, I'm
Well,
sorry, we can't do
objections
that.
automatically, if you don't tell somebody what you bloody want, you'll not get it.
That's it. That's all he's after, though.
That's all we're-
He wants to avoid the implementation, all the nitpicking, the implementation details, and be on the idea, the
No, but
ideal.
it's no
He
good
wants to
sitting
make a
about in a
picture.
hangout, speaking between us, saying what we would like. We need to get hold of the programmer who's writing the bloody Eve program and saying, hey, listen,
Right, deep into it. It can
like
all be
this,
done.
buddy.
Everything's possible. Forget about the details. Everything's
Yeah,
possible.
everything is
Come
possible.
up with the
We just-
idea that's good.
We just have to dream it, and then it can be
Yeah,
created.
dream it up, and
Too
somebody's going to implement
too
it.
long.
Yeah.
As a programmer, that's all. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so let's I guess let's take an example here that Oaf brought up about the required skills to get something done, and what if we take one of the simpler things like mining? And so mining is a skill in itself. And what would be...
Sorry, Marcus. I'm assuming that you're writing this down so that we
I
can
am.
get an overview.
I am.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
And so, in order to mine efficiently, what does that skill look like? What is it made up of? What is all required to do that?
Well, you could make mining a skill in itself. archaeology to actually
Archaeology. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
to find out
Basic
the consistency, basic geology or geology, archaeology about the
Or
consistency of the rock or the identification skills to see what you're actually up to, which also improve. Then I don't know, it will be related to some sort of basic strength and stamina type of things if we're going to include that as well in the game. Because the better, of course, and the longer you've trained, the better you can wield one of those things, and the longer you can mine without getting exhausted. If we want to implement,
And the more you can carry, blah blah.
yeah,
blah.
exactly.
But you can understand, though, Oaf, that there are other gentlemen and ladies in the room who are concentrating on different parts of Eve. Yeah.
This game does not have anything to do with Eve. Just so you know.
I mean, when I talk about Eve, I talk about programming in general. The last thing I knew is, my friend, last time I came in here, you were talking about Eve, so I used that as a juncture.
Mark,
Right,
Mark,
to
what
segue.
MMOs have you played?
Well, I've played lots of MMOs, my friend. I wrote MMOs back in the syntax day, as stupid as they bloody were. You know what I mean?
Okay, and
But,
let me
1985.
let me just ask one more question here. Define an MMO.
Well, I mean, we're talking about programming, yes?
Okay, thanks, Mark, for your help. I don't think we need your help anymore in this
Okay,
round
fair
table.
enough.
Yeah. So okay, so he was just here to
Thank you, Jesus.
I don't know. He was trying to take your spot, Mr. Evil.
Marky, that was the same guy from last time in the Eve Roundtables.
Golly, why didn't I recognize him before?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was
so
writing it.
When
I was writing it in the
being
chat.
able to spot what kind of rocks have how much of what kind of ore, there might be a more of a scientific component in addition to the ability to, bring the rock home and refine it. There might be somebody who can spot good places to mine, like overseers, people who can direct miners.
And then, would there be any skill requirements necessary for things such as how to build the tools, or
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
or
but
can
but
you
let's-
just
that
can you
should be
just buy them and then use them?
That should be more of a blacksmithing side of the profession.
Well,
Yeah.
but you need an
So
axe.
valued what
You
they
need
have
a
to
shovel.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you don't necessarily know how to make them.
No, you don't, and that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Now, for instance, if you were to take and have you have a mining professional, he may or may not know how to make his tools, but he can identify ore on site, and he could probably tell you the quality more accurately than anybody else around. However, if you go to a blacksmith, he too would be able to identify ore and the quality of the ore, but he wouldn't be able to tell you where to find it. So there would be
Yeah.
some crossover, like if you were to put two semi-transparent circles across each other, and there would be a crossover where, like, the red circle and the blue circle suddenly make a purple area. That's where that skill crosses.
But sorry to interrupt, Evil, but there's one thing I think that we should not forget, that there are players, and there are going to be future players who are individualists. They like to play alone, which means that the game mechanics should always be designed in such a way that you should certainly have those people be allowed to play everything that there is to do alone, whether it would take more time, but they should be able to do that independently from anybody else.
I agree.
So I think it's still then a very good idea to just go to physically close our eyes, put ourselves in the mine and say, okay, we're in the mine, or we're standing in front of a piece of rock that's going to be a mine. What do we need? And what does that involve? What tools do we need? What does it implement? And then write everything down and make a huge list of all this stuff that we can later then sort of like categorize and like, okay, so this goes to blacksmithing, that goes to carpenting, that goes to so and so and so and so. And we can do, and when we're done with the mine, we go, I don't know, we put ourselves in the field and we say, let's go hunting. What do we need? We make a similar list. Then we go in our house, or we go in a piece of land in which we said, this is going to be our house. What do we need? You write down all those things, so in the end you will have a very long list of everything that you could potentially make or have or want in the game, and then you make a separation into the categories and say, okay, this is the skills we need for all these things. Because otherwise, I'm afraid that if we're not going to do that, every time we come up with a tiny little part that is maybe either a bit more to the left or to the right, we're going to end up with a 15-minute discussion about that thing, which is not bad, except it's too preliminary right now to talk about in depth.
Well, maybe we should just throw this at the developers and say, hey, this is the process we want you to go through.
Right, or even that, we just provide them with a giant list of stuff and say, okay, this is what we want, you figure it out. We just give them a very long list of stuff and say, this is what we want to create, and you do the math or the magic.
Yeah.
But I think that creating a long list of everything that we can quickly go up to in these meetings, because an hour is very short, as we have noticed yesterday as well. So just to speed up things. What do you say, Marcus?
In the immediate.
I think that your method of working backwards is very good, and I think that it should start with simplicity of what are the lowest level, the base items that are needed in the game for doing anything else.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like lumber, ore, herbs, elements, and stuff like that. And so you come up with your first initial skills of what it takes to acquire those things.
Yes.
And then we have those defined, and then we're like, okay, you know.
Yeah, we could temporarily put them in like a profession, although we're maybe not going to implement professions, but you would just say, okay, so mining, it would be a profession to get rocks and ore and all those things. So we'll just call it a profession for the time being, and then see whatever we need within that profession. Once we're done, we then go to gathering herbs or whatever comes around with it. And we said, okay, so we call that gathering, the profession. What do we need for the profession of gathering? And then all the tools and requirements roll out from that. And we hop along everything that we can come up with what we want to implement in the game.
So we have some tier of professions, like primary, secondary, tertiary. Being tertiary being the final sort of starting up the
primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Yeah, right. But that's for much later.
Yeah, so
that's how you implement the skills in the technical level. But first, we have to come up with what we actually need.
Yeah, so the primary ones, we sort of try and battle out the primary professions that we do need. As you say, lumber, be it wood carving or not wood carving, wood chopping, and then fishing and just the basic stuff and mining.
Oh, fishing! Woohoo! I like
fishing. There you go.
So that's food acquiring or whatever.
Fishing.
I don't know what it's
Fishing and
called.
hunting.
You get too drunk to fight monsters. You gotta just sit around and catch fish.
I loved fishing in WoW. I have to say.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would sit and do that for hours while I was working on something, and then I'd be like, "Oh shit! Look at that fish I just caught."
Yeah, but it's pretty damn hard to catch that 50-pounder, isn't it?
It's not good. It's not good now where you can go to 1 to 600 or whatever it is in one place.
Yeah. So, well, I'm sure that there are books on fishing. And the better your fishing pole, the better stuff you can catch.
And your bait.
So, okay, well, so I think we're about out of time for this episode. There will be another episode tomorrow. Eva will like the subject for tomorrow. The subject for tomorrow is dungeons, both player-made and developer-made. And so that should be a lot of fun. Because, Evil, you had some great ideas on that, and I think we'll use that as a starting point. And
I'll write them up on the forum tonight.
And then the following day, we're going to talk about Kickstarter rewards, because the game here is going to Kickstarter, and so that's how it's going to be funded. I mean, it's got its initial. Obviously, we've seen stuff already, so it's already got funding. But to get it in our hands, we're going to go through Kickstarter. So anyway. Thank you, you guys, everybody except for the troll. And
I hope I'm not him.
I appreciate all your feedback. You guys did really well. I really like the ideas that I'm hearing and the feedback. And chat room, I have to say that it's hard to keep up concentrating on all of this at the same time. And so maybe I'll recommend that somebody here next time monitors the chat room and pulls out the best stuff from chat and is their voice. So, okay, everybody. This time, same time again tomorrow. And I appreciate it. Take care.
Cheers,
All
mate.
right, take care, man.
Later.